Hey, I'm Nathan Tabor with Handling Life. Hope you're doing well. I've got a really special guest today. It's Whitney Sewell, and Whitney runs Life Bridge Capital. And I had the honor and pleasure of doing his podcast a few weeks back, and I wanted to invite him on to let him tell you about what he does, and then also to talk about some handling life and work-life balance types things. So, Whitney, it's good to have you with me today, and I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, I'm doing great, Nathan. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Yeah, thanks. So tell me a little bit, and our listeners, what do you do and where are you located and some of the fun stuff, right?
Sure. So I'm located in Roanoke, Virginia, and our company is called Life Bridge Capital, and we we're a real estate syndication business. So we look for large apartment complexes, multifamily properties with a value add. So there's a way to add value to those properties and anyway, initially or eventually sell them, turn those properties over for a profit, obviously, and then provide great returns to investors. But our a big part of our business is we've committed 50% of our profits to helping families in the adoption process, just because of that expense. And so my wife and I are very passionate about adoption, and we're in our third process now. And so that's our ultimate goal, is helping those families in the adoption process. But yes, a lot of things have led us to this business, and that's where we're at the moment.
That's awesome. So what's the background? Why the adoption? You mind sharing a little bit of that story with us?
Sure. So, a few years back, it would have been 2011. My wife and I were going to this thing called Secret Church, and Pastor David Platt was doing a teaching, and it's which I highly recommend. By the way, they'll do another one this coming April, but it's called Secret Church. And that specific night, he was talking about caring for orphans and widows, and he had adopted a child or numerous children by that time. And so on our way home, my wife Chelsea and I, we had never even thought about adopting, and honestly, I mean, it had never even crossed our mind. We had never discussed it. But that night, on our way home, we just got to thinking about it, and we couldn't think of a good reason why we would adopt. It's not like, well, why should we? I mean, we just are like, why wouldn't we do that? And so within a week, I mean, just obviously we prayed about it, and we just felt the Lord was leading us to adopt. And within a week's time, my wife turned in an application to, uh, or had it completed. She did all the paperwork. I get no credit for that, but she completed the paperwork, and we turned in an application to adopt from Ethiopia. And within 2 years, or 2 years to the month, our first son Samuel came home, and then pretty quickly after we started the process again and brought our second son home.
That's awesome. I mean, I don't know. I've never adopted. I have a daughter, but I imagine, yes, hearing that small little still voice, hey, do this. But there had to be some moments in there where God really, or, why me? Or because that's not an easy process. Not only is it financially not easy, but the internal, is this the right decision for our family? How did you all handle that?
So yeah, it is a very long process, and it is it's a roller coaster, honestly. And we were committed to the process and to adopting. We knew that's what the Lord had for us, and it really, in many ways, especially through the second adoption, also the Lord has used that to grow our faith and just really grow us. I mean, to look more like Him in many ways. Financially, most people have no idea, but it can cost anywhere from 40 to 60,000, to complete one process. And so, we did lots of fundraising, and so lots of, lots of things online. We did a thing called Both Hands Project, which I recommend people looking up. A guy in Nashville called JT Olson, and it's a way that you put together a crew to help a widow own her home, and the crew gets donations to help fund the adoption. So the orphan gets brought home, and the widow gets her home taken care of also. But anyway, we had to do many things like that to help fund this adoption, but the Lord provided, and even our second adoption, the Lord provided over $38,000, just through fundraising. And but really, it was it was our family, which are in Kentucky, but then also our church family here that really stood behind us and helped us, spiritually and just encouraging us. And many of them had been through the process and just knew the roller coaster we were on. Not so much, I mean the funding, but also just like you said, God, is this really going to happen? Is month after month after month of waiting and just just wondering is it going to happen, how long is this really going to take? And then and even then going to Ethiopia the first time, we finally got matched, of course, which is a glorious day, right? And
Yes.
then but then we get to go meet our son, and he was 4 months old at the time, and a little bitty, but and we had to leave him there and come home, and and that was pretty difficult. He wasn't very well, but anyway, Lord sustained him, and we got to go back a couple months later and bring him home.
That's really that's really cool. I don't know, but I imagine that, seeing that child for the first time and getting to hold him and love on him and hugging him and kiss him. On back of my business cards, and it's probably for 15 or so years now, is James 1:27, which the loose interpretation is the truest form of religion is taking care of the orphans and the widows. And so that's really cool that you all, not only for your own family that you're doing that, but you're also, helping others. Do you find that in especially our society today, of mixing, combining your faith in your business or your faith in your life, kind of get some odd looks from some people like, hey, Whitney, leave your religion out of this. But in reality, I mean, we don't need to do that, but even myself, I'm tempted at times to do it because sometimes it's just easier not to talk about my faith because I don't want to offend someone. But then when I don't talk about it, then it's normally, there's some issues that come about that. Do you find that in your business you're in with your apartments, or even with the adoption side of, how hard would it be to go through that process if you don't have God to lean on, right?
Mm. The adoption specifically. I mean, I can't even imagine it without the Lord. Um, my wife and I just are. I mean, I just give the Lord credit for our marriage and our relationship with Him, and because I mean, before we knew the Lord, my wife and I, and compared to where we're at now, it's just two totally different couples. You would see us
Yeah.
totally different now, and I can't imagine going through the adoption process, without knowing the Lord, just because it is very long and drawn out, and you're just like, Lord, is this ever going to happen? And but like I said, He grew our faith in many ways, and just learning to trust Him, and even more so, in our second one also.
Yeah. Do you find with your faith in the business you're in with apartments, that sometimes, there's a challenge of, you don't want to be a Bible thumper, right? Everything doesn't have to be finished with the Bible verse. But do you find that combining your faith in business helps you? Does it keep you
No doubt.
grounded? Does it help? Well, let me even ask this too. Does it help you? And do you find that people run away from you because you do share your faith?
you know with the adoption, it's kind of like it's almost right out there, and it's helped me to be more bold in my faith, honestly, to be able to bring up the adoption. And obviously our boys, it's pretty obvious, that they're adopted, and so it's right out there anyway. And but in the business side, um it's been interesting. I mean, I am pretty open about my faith, and I try to be, and but it's been a learning experience, also, and just praying, every day, really, that the Lord would just give me the opportunities to share. And it is a struggle, like knowing when to, how much time do I spend, trying to build this relationship before I'm ready to share the gospel with someone, or, but knowing that's really the essential thing that they need, you know.
It's one of those, you don't want to offend someone, right? You don't want to push them, but at the same time, you don't want to not talk about your faith. And, and on my side with my business and stuff, I go to sit down to have lunch with someone and I'm trying to do a business consulting deal with them or executive coaching or whatever it may be. And our meal gets sat down in front of us. And I kind of call it the 3-second rule. If I don't say, hey, do you mind if I bless our food within 3 seconds, I won't, because, well, if you do that, what are they going to say? Or what if you lose the contract? And so it's just, I say it almost as the food's being sat down on the table. So I don't even, get the 3 seconds to think about it. And I think there are ways to share our faith with others by the way we talk, by the way we conduct ourselves, by the way we deal with challenges or conflict. Something comes up in the contract. There's a lot of ways we can share our faith without ever mentioning a Bible verse, right?
That's right. That's right. I think that, when you are, I don't know, when you serve in the Lord, I just think it really comes out in everything you do. And I think people see it. They almost expect me to share with them, before I do.
Yeah.
They know it's coming.
So for when we've talked about this before, not during this segment, but in past, of you've been there and I've been there where we didn't handle things the right way.
Mm.
We didn't address someone, or we dealt with problems. Do you mind sharing something? We don't want all the dirty secrets and details in that, but something that you maybe handled wrong, what caused it, and then, where did the Lord bring you to, and what did you do to get out of it? Business deal, personal, an adoption process, something that went wrong. And in that moment, instead of acting like a Christian, the flesh takes over, right? And I've been there, everybody does it. But, one of the goals of this podcast is to show others that, hey, you're not alone in your faults, right? Is there anything that pops to mind on you on that one, mistake that you made that?
I know I've made plenty of those. I was trying to think of a good example.
Should we get your wife on here and let her tell us about those? Because my wife could fill up a few hours of mine, right?
I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
That's okay. Hey, with that, so, think about it this way. Was there a process during the adoption period where, the timing went wrong? So, hey, you're going to get this in a month, and it took 3 months. And, Lord's always trying to teach us patience. And that's, whenever God was handing out patience, I wasn't paying attention. And in those moments of weakness and stress and anxiety, we can really say some things to our spouse or business partner because that's caused us an issue, right? But instead of focusing on the issue and praying about it, we let our temperament and our attitude get the best of us.
I know just even during this current adoption, the third one that we're in now, so you get through the process, you do what's called, you present, to a birth mother, or she kind of sees a magazine, or we call it a profile, that kind of lays out pictures of your family, and she picks the family that's going to parent that child. And we've, during this process, it's been difficult at times because we have presented numerous times and haven't been selected. And so, it's like, it's almost like, I want to get frustrated with the Lord. It's like, emotionally, our, family's just desiring to bring this baby home and care for it, love it. But, we see that we think, this should be the one, but it's like, Lord, what's going on? So, it's very easy, or I know I've been frustrated, at times about that, and obviously seeing, our family be frustrated, but it really, we just kind of have to step back and say, okay, Lord, the timing. We've been through it so many times that, and other things too, that we know His timing is perfect, right?
Yeah.
But just like you said, there's still times where it's like, seriously, we're not selected again,
you get your hopes up, right?
What's that?
You get your hopes up. You're excited about, like, oh, this could be the time, and then it doesn't happen, and it's like, well, God, why? I mean, I thought you called me to do this.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And if we're not careful there, we can become depressed. We can become agitated. I always look at it from this way in the last few years of my life and my walk with God. Questioning God is not wrong. Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane said, question God, hey, if you've got someone else, bring him, come on, I'll switch places. The difference is when Jesus knew that it was God's will, he stopped questioning and went and did it.
Mm.
And what I find in my life, and I'm sure if we're honest as Christians, when that process doesn't go the way we want it to, whether it's an adoption or a job or a raise or whatever, it's okay to say, God, what's the purpose here?
Mm.
But then we don't need to stay in that, what if or why. We need to move on and say, I don't understand, but there's a purpose here. There's a reason. It's called God's will, right?
That's right.
That's
That's right.
easy to say, really easy to tell someone else, hey, just, get in God's word and pray and everything will be all right. But the actual application, especially when you're in that position, because you could get very frustrated with that, right?
Right.
Very
Very
down.
frustrated.
And what happens with your relationship with your wife and hers with yours, if you all are with everything else that's already going on in life, just your own life and her life, and then something like this, if you're not careful, it can cause a fracture in your relationship, right?
It can, and I have to really brag on my wife, but she's amazing, by the way. But her, it's just the Lord has just really done a work in both of us lately, and then I can just really see it in her. But she has just really uh, come alongside me in a big way, and just encourages me almost every day, and just whether it's through Scripture or just just reminding me how faithful the Lord is when I'm discouraged, or when I'm something just didn't happen to go the way I expected or hoped, and I'm probably not as happy or as I should be, and but it instead of it coming between us lately, I mean, she has just really just used the word, and she's just praying for me. I can see her prayers answered in me, just really often, very often now.
That's awesome. Do you find now and know that even when you think your wife doesn't know that you're having a bad moment or a bad hour or a bad day, that she already knows?
For sure, she knows before
Right.
I say a word.
And it took me, I've been married for almost 15 years. It took me about 10 years to stop trying to pull the wool over my wife's eyes of, oh, everything's great or nothing's wrong. And I finally realized that intuition of a woman, especially a wife that knows you, that she knew I was, either a hypocrite or wasn't telling her the truth, or it became so much easier to start sharing my fears and my doubts with her because she already knew something was wrong. And it actually aggravated her that I wouldn't share with her. And so you're kind of that point with your wife that, if others are listening to this and they're not at that point, they think, oh, that would be hard. It's actually easier, right?
I agree. We've been married 10 years this year, and I would agree completely. We're more open than we've ever
How
been.
long did it take you to get to that point with your wife? And some people have it from like day one, which, jealous in the sense of that, but most people don't. And some don't ever get it, right? How long, what stage did that come along in y'all's relationship?
I don't know if it was 5 or 6 years, maybe 7, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, can you imagine trying to go through all the business and all the adoptions and not having that relationship? Y'all would be at each other's throats, right?
Yeah, we would, and you even talk about the intuition, of your wife, and I found, I guess I've learned more so over the last couple of years, just trusting how the Lord leads her, trying to anyway. And when it's even something in business or in real estate where she wouldn't she wouldn't be the expert in real estate that you might go ask a question to. But however, I can be talking about stuff, even in real estate, and the Lord will speak to her, and she'll have a feeling one way or the other, and I'm learning it's something I need to listen to.
Brother, that is that's a good word right there, right? I mean, because as men with our pride, if we see a business deal, we're like, yeah, I'm going to go do that. And I can think back in my own real estate and where my wife kind of, pulled me, tugged me a little bit. And I was like, I've got this, you do your thing. I'm doing my thing. And guess what happened in those deals?
Went south.
Yeah. And quick. But thankfully she was kind enough not to, to do the, I told you so. Probably did in her mind, but at least she didn't do it open, because I don't, everybody has their talents, everybody has their gifts. And I think that is women's, the intuition side of something's not right here. They might not know what it is, but something's, at least take a minute to look at it and see why it doesn't make sense. So, you made a good point earlier. I can't remember exactly how you said it, but kind of the thought is, just because we're Christians, just because we're believers, doesn't mean that things are always going to go our way. Doesn't mean that the process, whether it's adoption or whatever it may be, is always going to run smooth. So if specifically in this, because you've been through it, and I haven't been through an adoption, but there's a lot of people out there who are currently going through it. What would you say to someone who's going through it for the first time, or they're considering doing it? Any resources you found out there, any materials, or just solid, one-liners that you would say, hey, here's something that can help you, consider or think about, or help you through one of these hard times?
I think first I would say you're welcome to contact me and my wife. We're happy to help you, or to talk about the process and walk you through what we've done and things we've learned.
And so right there, real quick before you go, how can people find you online? What's and I'll put it in the footnote as well of this, but
so, I mean, the company website is lifebridgecapital.com, and there's a place on there, that you can even schedule a call with me. And, you can send me a message that way, or Whitney@lifebridgecapital.com. And if you are interested in adoption, or if you're thinking about it in any way, we would love to talk to you and talk to you about our experiences. And, I think, we've talked about a lot of the hardships and through the process and how long it is, but it's an amazing reward. It's so worth it, bringing your child home, and it's very worth the roller coaster ride to bring your child home.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, the chill bumps of that, because I know the joy of bringing my daughter home, in anticipation of that. I would imagine it's very similar. The anticipation of, what's our child going to be like? What, where are we going to get picked? So it'd have to be, is there, besides someone contacting you, if they're not at that point yet, do you have anything that sticks out to you, that a verse or a statement or a phrase that you would share with someone, of if they're considering, or they're in the challenge point on that?
You'd ask about a resource, and I'd mentioned it earlier. One thing is the Both Hands Project. It's a great way to help a widow and help fund your adoption at the same time. And let's see, another resource. Michael W. Smith also has a nonprofit that helps people in the adoption process, and which is really useful. And I would also recommend, if you're not going through foster care or something like that, if you're adopting, and is to hire a consultant to help you through the process. And this is our second time using a consultant, and it's been very, very useful. And I'd be happy to put somebody in contact with somebody that does that.
Good, and I'll get some of those links as well and put down in the notes so people can find some of that. And I appreciate your offer of taking your time, and so people know there's no charge on that first initial call or any of those emails of contacting Whitney and his wife to discuss this, to talk to them. Hey, this is my concern. I mean, if you have a concern, it's better to talk about it up front than to try to talk about it afterwards. Would you agree with that, Whitney? I mean,
For
get,
sure. There's so many things about adoption that you just have no clue about, until you get into it or until you even bring your child home, that you just don't think about until then. And you just wouldn't know to think about it.
yeah, in that, in a summation of kind of starting to wrap up here is, what I encourage myself and others is, what Proverbs says: seek wisdom and counsel of others. You have an experience, you have a story, you have a perspective that I don't, and vice versa. So, my goal in all of this is to, connect Christians, brothers and sisters who have either been there, done that, got the scars, got the t-shirt, and, have some wisdom about it, or those who are in the midst of it or considering going into the midst of it, of, having a real conversation. We too all we're as Christians, we're still sinners, we're still saved by the grace of, and we're saved by the grace of God, but we still have to deal with our pride and our self-centeredness and our ego. And I hope people hear through this and through your story that, hey, here's a couple who's been there, done it twice, in the process of the third time of adopting, and they're willing to talk to you, to share with you and answer any questions. So, kind of drop that I know it all, or I can read about it on Google, and really reach out to somebody who has the same, value system as you do. So Whitney, is wrapping up. What's some, one of your favorite books that you're reading, or something that you would share with someone, if they're you, 5 years ago, in a sense, what would you, advice wise, would you give to someone?
Something my wife and I have enjoyed recently is George Mueller's autobiography, and one thing that's kind of stuck with us in that is he talked about do it all for God's glory and the strength that He provides. And I don't know if I'll get it exactly right, but have full faith that that success depends on God, and but work like it depends on you. And I really liked that statement. Um, just having faith that that success depends on Him. Whether it's adoption or whether it's business or whatever that may be, but work like it depends on you.
That is the thing that trips myself and most up, is when the rubber really meets the road. Right? We want God to give it to us. We want it to be done, but we're not willing to put our effort into it. And that's one of my struggles in my life is, God, do this. And then when it's not done, well, God, why didn't you? But then I didn't do my part.
Hmm.
And that's one thing that I'm encouraging myself on and others is, it's not, you read God's word, it's not, God's given us His promise of blessings and protection. But then there's, you look at James 3, there's requirements of us. If we apply our own wisdom, we get conflict and chaos and all of that. But if we apply God's wisdom, we get peace, mercy, and harmony, and all this. And so that's good of, hey, it's not that God's not there for you. It's that maybe you need to turn around because the direction you're going is away from God, not towards you.
Hmm.
So, Whitney, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate all that you do, not only in your business. If somebody's interested in the apartment side and syndication, I know you have ethics and values and have a successful track record there. But I also really appreciate you sharing the joys of adoption, but also the challenges and how you and your wife have dealt with that. So in wrapping us up here, do you find that giving God control and doing things His way, applying His word to your life, has made your life easier than when you were a Christian and kind of doing the Jonah thing and not applying His word to your life?
No doubt. I mean, it's just knowing that it's just really a lot of weight off your shoulders, right? When you can just trust that the Lord's got it under control, and that He does, and that I really can't control any of it. It's just it's a major relief, just knowing and that I can just talk to him anytime and just be able to just give things to him and just know that he's got it taken care of. And not trying to find the joy in the circumstances, but trying to find the joy, in the Lord, and because all these earthly things are going to pass, right?
Yep.
And are just temporary pleasures, and so when we can really just be content and trust in the Lord and just have faith that He's got it taken care of, is that's really when we can relax, I guess.
That
A little.
that's his promises to us. So, Whitney, thank you so much. Again, you can find more about Whitney and his company and his adoption project at lifebridgecapital.com. And if you want to learn more about handling life, you can visit handlinglife.org. And I hope you will really take this into consideration, even if adoption's not in your life and that's not your calling. The principles we've talked about here about giving God control and doing things his way, and the outcome of it applies to your life. And I hope you will really take that into consideration and live your life according to what God has called you to do.